Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle. This is Easily Knitfluenced, and this is where I talk about all things knitting related. Today, I'm doing something I've never done before, so we're gonna see what the viewership is like on this video. But I bought a book recently, which I picked up at my local yarn store, which is Pick Up Every Stitch in Mount Kisco, and I was kind of surprised upon looking at it and seeing what it was all about, and being really enthusiastic about it that I haven't really heard about this book. Nobody's talked about it. I haven't seen any YouTube videos about it. So I thought I would do a quick little book overview today and tell you guys more about this book. This is Seasonless, which is a collaboration between Karen Templer and Amirisu. Amirisu is a Japanese publication that's spelled Amirisu. They've been around for, I think, about 12 years. Think of them as a kind of like I don't know, a Japanese version of Lina Magazine or one of those types of publications. They've got a couple physical stores, I think, in Tokyo and Osaka. They publish patterns, they do collaborations with different designers. And this is one of those. So they've done a book with Karen Templer, who's a designer based in, I think, Florida, I want to say. And this is a really neat book, and I'm going to explain why. I think I'll kind of break up this video into a few sections. One being like the motivation behind this book and kind of how it came to be and why it appeals so much to me. I'll talk about some of the designs that are in the book, show you guys some pictures, and kind of show you how they've done a really clever thing here, which is to kind of create templates in the book that you can modify to the way you want to make the garment. And then I'll talk about who I think this is a good fit for. Like if you were to buy this, what kind of knitters this would be appropriate for, or if you were to gift it to someone, like what kind of, person this would be good for. But let's start with the price. It's a hardcover book, nice and sturdy, not too heavy or big, but feels good in the hands. This will run you, I think it's 28 US dollars. The price in yen is also on the back. If you live in Japan, this is 3,200 yen. Oh, and I should say I bought this book with my own money. This is not sponsored. I have no affiliation with either of the people who collaborated on this book. So this is purely just my thoughts after buying this one day at my local yarn store. Let's get into kind of the backstory of this book. So I'm going to paraphrase the foreword a little bit. Basically, Karen Templer says, she's been kind of in the knitting ecosystem for a long time and has seen countless designs kind of go in and out of fashion, but like she keeps coming back to the classics, and meaning things like a beanie, a simple raglan pullover, cardigans, things that are sort of, not in and out of style, things that are a bit more timeless. And she sort of designed the book around that concept. So the idea of having a template for some of these kind of core designs, basically, but being able to tweak them and change them and make them your own so that, you're not just making the exact same sweater over and over again, but you can kind of basically amend things just with the designs that are in this book so that you create garments that are based on the same basic structure, but very, very different looking. Another genius thing they have done in this book is these are all worsted weight patterns. So they are designed for the exact same gauge, which is a 19 stitch gauge. Row gauge seems to vary, especially depending on, I think, the type of like pattern you're using. So I'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, the stitch gauge, 19 stitches. So if you, like me, have a ton of like DK to worsted just lying around in various quantities, this is a great book to work your way through some of that. So let me get into how this book is, the concept of this book is put together. And I think the best way to do that will probably be to show you this. So this is the design matrix. And there's these 5 basic types of garments that she's kind of put together here. So you've got the fingerless mitts, the hat, the everyday vest, everyday pullover, and then the cardigan. And the matrix is really around how you can modify these things. So you've got stockinette up here, you've got the stripes, you've got a mosaic pattern, and then texture bands on the side. So just from kind of this template, right, of these different garments and accessories, you can modify to a huge degree when you start to incorporate bands of color and mosaic texture and so on. Like, this is kind of the core idea of the book is like, yeah, if you just look at this, this sweater over here, okay, it's a basic raglan, like we all like those, but you can modify that with, a turtleneck collar with this cool mosaic pattern. This looks like it could be a completely different pattern, right? But it's just a variation of this one. So same thing with the hats, same thing with, all of these, there's like little amendments you can make and then choices you can make about, do you want mosaic on this one? Do you want texture? Do you want stripes? And I think it's such a neat idea. I haven't seen anybody do this. And, I think it's very organized in a way that that really appeals to me. So let me show you guys. I'm not going to show you the patterns, but I will show you like the designs. So the first one, she actually calls these, I'm getting a little glare here, but she calls these the swatch mitts. And this is a really cool idea too. So I'm just going to read a paragraph here. Swatching is a critical step in the knitting process, but if we're being honest, almost nobody actually enjoys swatching. Agreed. It can feel like a waste of time and yarn, plus the only good swatch is a big swatch. True, I make small swatches. So these mitts solve multiple problems. What you're knitting is a generous swatch with a destiny. A 7-inch by 8.5-inch piece of fabric that will tell you whether you're on gauge for other patterns in this book. So the idea is you kind of knit these basically as a swatch. You measure them and everything, and then you can seam them together to be the swatch mittens. Genius idea, and also avoids what has happened in my closet, which is I have a whole drawer full of swatches, and they just sit there because I'm like, well, what if I need the yarn? If like a sweater, like I need to fix something in the sweater. And also, I don't know, I just don't have the heart to throw them away. So they sit there and they just take up space and they're messy. And yeah, it's just more clutter in my life. This is a much better way to actually use your swatch and have it be something useful or something you can gift to someone. And yeah, it serves a purpose. So very smart. Here's another picture of all the different types of mitts you can make on the sample photos. Okay, then she has the warm-up hat, which this one you can have as kind of a cap, like a snug-fitting cap, slouchy or beanie. You can do a plain or a fold-over brim, and then each of the 4 stitch patterns. So there's various different things here. Oh, and I should say, all of this, like all the writing here, like whether it's the pattern or the narrative, it's in both English and Japanese. So if you're bilingual like me, that's great. So you can read both. If you are learning Japanese and you like to knit, this might be a good way to kind of practice that, I guess. So yeah, various different things you can do with the hats. Here's some more sample pictures. The photography in this book is really cool. I'm really into it. Then you have the Forever Vest. So this is knitted actually bottom up, interestingly, then seamed at the shoulders. And so you have your usual 4 stitch pattern choices, but they have 2 shape options as well. There's the straight-sided, slightly cropped, and then A-line and high hip length. So the Forever Vest, very cool. And here is a couple of sample pictures. I'm obsessed with this one. Look at that. That is so cool. I love that color and the white. Oh, it's great. It's going to be a cool, like, Christmas kind of, a little bit unorthodox, I guess, but a Christmas knit as well. This is awesome. I love it. So cool. Then you have the everyday pullover. So this is your basic timeless raglan pullover. But, this also, you've got a couple of different fit options. You can have fit, loose, or oversize, and there's different options for all of those. There's a choice between a crew neck, either a plain crew neck or folded. I would do folded personally, or a turtleneck. And then you have the 4 stitch options. So, I mean, you could really totally customize this. All right. And then last but not least, there is the Everybody cardigan. So again, this is knit top down, raglan. She calls it a wardrobe building block. I agree. You can scale up or down, same as the pullover, and pick your stitch pattern, colors, and you can choose plain button band or the shawl collar. You can add 1 pocket or 2 pockets. So again, there's just so many things you can do with this. And here are some sample pictures of the cardigan. So one thing I'll say here is she says somewhere in the intro, this is designed to be kind of helping you build your skills. So she's like, it's sort of like every instruction she gives is maybe geared towards beginners, as in she is saying, hey, do like um, a simple cast off or do like a long tail cast on. But I think the implication is like if you want to do Italian bind off, like go for it, right? So I think there's a lot of modification you can do to this. She's kind of like geared it towards beginners. So the patterns go from the most simple, which is like the swatch mitts, to things like buttons on your cardigans and stuff like that. So I think it's designed to kind of build with you in your skills as you move through the different pattern categories. So those are all the basic elements of what she's working with here, the 5 different designs. Then she has some stitch patterns in here, which I won't go into. She has some yarn selection tips, and she mentions a couple yarns that were used in the samples. There's Retrosaria Rosa Pomar, Durerum Natura, there's Daruma Knitting Cotton, Kelborn Woolen, there's Pearl Soho Sunshower Cotton. So there's a couple like different suggestions in here of things you can use. I wouldn't sweat this too much personally. I feel like, in that like worsted category, I mean, I've even gotten away with a DK for worsted before. So like, I wouldn't get too hung up on the yarn choices, but they give a couple suggestions here. If these are easily accessible to you, for sure, use them. I think why not? And then yeah, there's the single gauge concept, which I think is genius. I don't know why other books haven't done this, but I think it's really clever because, that way if you know there's a yarn that works, you can use that for all of these. And if you're someone who likes to knit in that range, this is perfect. There's like 100 different variations on patterns you can do here at a worsted gauge. And the nice thing about worsted is it's not a bulky, but it's not like these patterns aren't going to take you so long as say a fingering would, because it's a worsted gauge. So you could theoretically kind of crank a couple of these out in a couple weeks rather. So one other cool thing she has in here is something called imagined wardrobes, where she interviews a few knitters and asks them like what they would knit for their wardrobe and how they would kind of style it. So it's sort of like this. It gives a little blurb on the knitter, and then it kind of says like what they would knit from the book and how exactly they would style it. So kind of a neat idea again. So I haven't really seen that very much. And then the book gets into all the patterns. So I'm not going to show you the pattern pages for obvious reasons. But what I will say is just kind of skimming this, they've done a really good job of, because there's a lot of options here, right? Like if you did the raglan, are you going to do stripes? Are you going to do oversized, the fit? Where, there's a lot of things where your choices could diverge. And I think given that, and given that this is, they've just put it in text, there's some charts in the beginning that you can follow for, say, if you want to do the mosaic. But the rest of it is kind of written out instruction-wise. And it's pretty easy to follow for all of those choices that you have. So I think, they've done a really good job of also not making these patterns like a zillion pages long. So it's not like, each one is 20 pages. This is like a couple pages each. And these are pretty size inclusive, especially the pullover and the cardigan have 10 sizes each. So, not bad in terms of the size inclusivity here. So who do I think this book is a good fit for? Okay, well, firstly, if you like knitting at a worsted gauge, perfect, right? I think this is a really good book for kind of what I would classify myself as like an advanced beginner, like someone who knows how to do sort of the basic stitches, knows how to like basically how to knit garments, but wants to, modify a little bit and get a little creative without necessarily kind of strictly follow, like continuously buying the same pattern for the same thing. Like this is a great way to do that. I will also say this is great for people like me who, say you go into a retail store and you see a top you like and you buy it in every single color and every texture pattern. So this is like, if you're that person, because I am, this is great for scratching that itch in your knitting life, right? Where you're like, oh, I love a raglan, but like I want stripes on it or I want mosaic on it. You don't have to go and buy 2 other patterns. You've got it all in one book. And if you kind of like make the shape that you like, you can just reproduce that over and over and put like different texture patterns on it, or do, a different color. Lots of ways you can modify all of these things, which I think is so cool. Another thing I think this would be really useful for is people who do a lot of gift knitting. I think basic, but kind of beautiful garments like this make really good gifts. And, they're quite universal. So I think most people probably own some kind of raglan, right? So it's not like a gift that's going to have too much riding on personal preference. I think this is like, if I were to contrast this book to something, I think I would contrast it to like the Sari Nordland book. I think her designs are gorgeous. They're like, it's just, there's cables, but there's cables everywhere. Like they're all very complex. And not everyone likes that. Not everyone kind of like wears those types of things. I feel like everybody wears hats. Everybody can wear a cardigan. Everybody can wear like a raglan style, sweatshirt, pullover type thing. So if you know someone who's like into gift knitting and they're kind of cranking stuff out every year, I think this is a great option because you can, again, you just like pick the sizing, pick the pattern, and you can even give the same person like the same thing if they really like it, but just modify the stitch pattern. So do like a stockinette one year and then do, the mosaic maybe another year. So I think this could be really good for people who like to gift knit as well. But I think this is a good gift for anybody who's like in that advanced beginner stage. And then people also that like kind of more stockinette style knitting. Like me, I like to have at least a couple stockinette projects on the go that I can do with minimal attention in the dark, while I'm watching TV or multitasking or doing something else. Yeah, like I love my more complex patterns, but I can't, there's a very limited amount of time every day that I can dedicate to something like a Sari Nordland pattern, right? Where you have to pay attention to every row. This is great because like even the mosaic, I think once you get into the rhythm of it, you could probably kind of get away with doing. If you're kind of on the advanced side, for sure the stockinette, for sure I think the texture you'd be fine doing while watching TV. So again, if you know somebody who is really into that type of knitting, I think this could be a good gift for them. But yeah, overall, I think awesome book. I'm surprised it hasn't been talked about more. So I am going to think about what I want to use up in my stash that I think could be a good fit for this. But I'm going to, pick and choose a couple patterns from here. And I will report back to you guys as and when I start these and what I think of them and my experience, like actually reading through and using the charts and the written parts and stuff. Also, I'll give you my usual rundown on that. But I think it's really exciting, and it's quite inspiring too. So I have some thinking to do, but highly recommend the book. I think it's awesome. If you can get it, you can call your local yarn store. I feel like to get this. It's a 2023 book. I feel like they probably should still stock it. I got this at Pick Up Every Stitch. I think Pearl Soho stocked it for some time on their website, but wherever your local yarn store is, I would just call them and see if they have it. But yeah, it's a really neat book. So I'm glad I bought this. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for watching. As always, I'll be back with more podcasts and regularly scheduled programming once I manage to get some stuff off my needles because everything is kind of stalled at the moment. But yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.